The late afternoon sun cast a warm, orange glow over the small town of Cedar Creek, Texas. Outside Mabel's diner, an elderly woman named Ruth sat on a wooden bench, her worn hands clutching a faded purse. Ruth had been deaf since childhood, relying on lip reading and gestures to communicate. She had always enjoyed visiting the diner for her afternoon coffee, greeting familiar faces, and watching life go by. Today, however, her peaceful routine was shattered. A group of local teens had noticed her sitting alone. They were restless, laughing and whispering to one another, their phones out. "Watch this," one of them muttered, pointing at Ruth, who remained unaware of their cruel attention. They began filming her, recording every motion, every expression, thinking it would be a source of amusement for their friends online. Ruth noticed the flashes of the camera but couldn't hear their laughter. Her heart sank as she realized they were mocking her, and tears welled up in her eyes. She tried to gesture, to ask them to stop, but the language barrier and their cruel smirks rendered her powerless. A few diners inside glanced nervously at the scene through the large windows, unsure if they should intervene. Some shook their heads and returned to their meals, feeling helpless. The town, usually calm and quiet, felt suddenly tense and heavy. Ruth sat frozen, her tears streaking her cheeks, feeling the sharp sting of humiliation. The laughter of the teenagers seemed louder than the hum of the nearby road. Her mind wandered to memories of better days, of family who had once cared for her. Yet today, she felt utterly alone. Then, a low rumble echoed down Main Street. The sound of motorcycles, deep and powerful, grew louder with each passing second. Heads turned, conversations halted. The group of teens paused mid-laugh, uncertain. From around the corner, a line of motorcycles appeared, engines roaring, chrome glinting in the dying sunlight. Leather jackets creaked as riders slowed and parked in front of the diner. These were no ordinary bikers. They were men and women known in Cedar Creek for their loyalty to the community, fierce protectors of those who could not defend themselves. The leader, a tall man with a stern face framed by graying hair, surveyed the scene. His eyes landed on Ruth, noticing her trembling hands and tear-streaked cheeks. Without exchanging words, the bikers dismounted and moved in formation, surrounding the teens like an unspoken warning. The air seemed to shift. The warmth of the sun now contrasted sharply with the cold intensity radiating from the bikers. Ruth, confused but sensing something had changed, looked up. There was a calm in their presence, a silent promise that justice was near. The teens glanced nervously at one another, feeling the weight of judgment from these formidable strangers. The laughter that had once been bold and brash faltered, replaced by uneasy shuffles. The diners inside the building held their breath, watching as the scene outside transformed from mockery to confrontation. The sound of engines faded into a tense quiet, leaving only anticipation hanging thick in the air. Ruth wiped at her eyes with a trembling hand. She did not know who these people were, but their arrival had already restored a sense of safety she thought she had lost forever. The tension in the air was palpable. The group of teens, once full of laughter and bravado, now stood frozen as the bikers approached. Each step the riders took seemed deliberate, commanding attention without a single word spoken. The leader, a man named Jack, with a lined face and calm but piercing eyes, stopped a few feet away from the tallest teen, a boy clutching his phone like a shield. "Enough," Jack said, his voice low but firm, carrying the weight of authority. The word alone made the teens flinch. The bullies tried to mutter excuses, but their voices faltered under the imposing presence of the bikers. One by one, the bikers subtly spread out, forming a barrier between the teens and Ruth. She watched from the bench, confusion and hope mingling in her eyes. The leader's gaze softened as he noticed her trembling hands and tear-streaked face. One biker stepped closer to Ruth, kneeling slightly so she could see his face. He gestured gently, pointing toward the diner's entrance and then back to the bikers, silently assuring her she was safe now. The bullies, sensing the seriousness of the situation, began shuffling their feet. Their phones slipped from their hands and clattered onto the pavement, forgotten. One of the bikers picked them up, examining them before tossing them aside, out of reach. "You made a mistake today," Jack said, addressing the teens. "Mocking someone who can't defend herself. That's not just cruel, it's unacceptable. You're going to leave, and you're going to think about what you've done." The teens nodded silently, fear and shame replacing the arrogance they had carried just minutes before. Ruth, still seated, wiped her tears, feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. These strangers had stepped into her world and protected her when she had felt powerless. One biker, a woman with a soft smile, offered Ruth her hand. "You're safe now," she said simply. Ruth hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand in hers. The warmth of the gesture spread through her, a tangible reminder that kindness still existed in unexpected places. With the teens retreating, the bikers gave Ruth space to stand. She took a few cautious steps, feeling a sense of empowerment she hadn't felt in years. The bikers exchanged quiet nods among themselves, satisfied that justice had been served without unnecessary confrontation. Jack gave a final glance toward Ruth. "Take care of yourself," he said. "You deserve peace." The engines roared to life once again, breaking the brief silence. The bikers mounted their motorcycles and, with synchronized precision, pulled away from the diner. The sound of rumbling engines echoed down Main Street, gradually fading into the distance. The diner's patrons, who had been watching silently, began murmuring their astonishment. Ruth returned to her bench, clutching her purse, but this time with a light in her eyes. She realized she wasn't as alone as she had felt. In a town that sometimes seemed indifferent, there were people who would step up for those who couldn't fight for themselves. For Ruth, that day outside the small Texas diner was more than just an incident. It was a reminder that courage and compassion could arrive on four wheels in a rumbling engine, ready to restore hope.